Your brain is not on your side, not yet, not in its current configuration. And every technique you have tried, every affirmation you have repeated, every vision board you have assembled, every meditation you have sat through with your eyes closed and your jaw tight with concentration, has failed to produce lasting change for one reason that has nothing to do with your dedication, your sincerity, or your worthiness. It has failed because you have been trying to run new software on old hardware. You have been attempting to generate a new reality using the same neural circuitry that was built without your consent to keep regenerating the old one. And that circuitry is not passive. It is not a quiet set of wires sitting in the background waiting for instructions. It is active. It is hungry. It is firing thousands of times a day, reinforcing the same emotional patterns, the same perceptual filters, the same automatic responses that have kept your life orbiting the same familiar center for years, possibly decades. You did not wire this circuitry. It was wired for you. By every experience you did not fully process, by every belief you absorbed before you were old enough to question it, by every emotional reaction that fired so many times it became automatic, became invisible, became what you now call your personality. And here is the part that changes everything. This circuitry is not permanent. It is not etched into stone. It is etched into neural pathways that are as plastic, as malleable, as reshapable as wet clay if you know where to press and how long to hold. Neville Goddard knew. He described the process with a precision that neuroscience would not catch up to for another half-century. And what he taught was not wishful thinking. It was not blind optimism dressed in spiritual language. It was a method for literally rewiring the brain, recalibrating the energy the brain produces, and watching as the external world reorganizes itself to match the new internal architecture. That is what we are going to walk through. Not the theory of it, the mechanics. Let us begin with what your brain is actually doing right now, in this moment, and in every moment of your waking life. Because until you understand the machine, you cannot reprogram it. And most people have never once looked under the hood. Your brain is a prediction engine. That is its primary function. Not creativity, not inspiration, not spiritual connection. Prediction. It takes the data of your past, every experience you have ever had, every emotion you have ever felt, every outcome you have ever witnessed, and it uses that data to construct a model of what is likely to happen next. Then it filters your perception through that model. It shows you what it expects you to see. It generates the emotions it expects you to feel. It prepares your body for the experiences it expects you to have. All of this happens before your conscious mind even enters the room. This is why your life keeps repeating itself, not because the universe is punishing you, not because you are cursed or unlucky or fundamentally flawed, but because your brain is constructing tomorrow using the blueprints of yesterday. It looks at your history of financial struggle and it predicts more financial struggle. It looks at your history of relational disappointment and it predicts more disappointment. And then, because it is an astonishingly efficient machine, it goes to work making those predictions come true. It directs your attention toward evidence that confirms the prediction. It generates emotions that match the prediction. It triggers behaviors that are consistent with the prediction. And when the predicted outcome arrives, which it almost always does, the brain does not say, "I caused this." It says, "See, I was right." And the loop tightens. This loop has a name in neuroscience. It is called a neural pathway. And the more frequently a particular thought, emotion, or behavior fires through the same pathway, the stronger and faster that pathway becomes. The cells that fire together wire together. This is not metaphor. This is the physical process of myelination, the biological mechanism by which repeated neural patterns become insulated, reinforced, and eventually automatic. Most habitual thoughts are not conscious choices. They are superhighways in your brain, so well paved and so deeply grooved that the signal travels through them faster than you can intercept it. By the time you notice you are feeling anxious, the anxiety has already been running for minutes. By the time you catch yourself thinking about what could go wrong, the thought has already completed 3 laps around the track. This is the hardware problem. You are not fighting your circumstances. You are fighting your own neural architecture, and you cannot win that fight using the same brain that created it. You need a different approach entirely. You need to stop trying to think your way out and start feeling your way into a new configuration. This is exactly where Neville Goddard enters the picture, and what he described, decades before any neuroscientist would confirm it, is the most elegant and precise method for neural rewiring that has ever been articulated in plain language. Neville did not use the language of neuroscience. He used the language of consciousness, of imagination, of states. But listen carefully to what he actually said, because beneath the spiritual vocabulary is a description of brain mechanics so accurate it is almost eerie. Neville taught that your imagination is not a whimsical faculty you use for daydreaming. It is the creative engine of your reality. He said that when you imagine a scene and you feel the reality of that scene as though it were happening now, you are not merely visualizing, you are occupying a state. And a state, in Neville's framework, is not just a mood. It is a complete configuration of thoughts, emotions, assumptions, and identity that, when fully inhabited, compels your external world to conform to it. Now translate this into what we know about the brain. When you vividly imagine a scene with full sensory and emotional engagement, your brain does not distinguish between the imagined experience and a physically lived one. The same neural networks fire, the same regions activate, the same neurochemical cascades are triggered. Your amygdala responds to an imagined threat with real cortisol. Your reward centers respond to an imagined success with real dopamine. Your body responds to an imagined state of peace with real parasympathetic activation, real muscular relaxation, real shifts in heart rate and breathing. This means that when Neville told you to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to enter a state in imagination, and to feel it as real, he was telling you to fire a new neural pattern. And if you do it repeatedly, with genuine, emotional engagement, you are literally building a new pathway in your brain. You are constructing a new superhighway, one that does not lead to the old predictions, the old emotions, the old automatic behaviors, one that leads somewhere your brain has never been, somewhere your body has never experienced, somewhere your reality has never reflected. Until now. This is not visualization as most people practice it. Most people visualize by creating a mental picture, while their body continues to broadcast the same old emotional signal. They see abundance in their mind, while their stomach is clenched with financial fear. They picture a loving relationship while their chest is heavy with loneliness. The image is new, the feeling is old, and the brain does not rewire in response to pictures. It rewires in response to feeling, to sustained emotional experience, to what the nervous system registers as real. Neville understood this completely. He was specific, maddeningly, insistently specific. He did not say, imagine what you want. He said, feel the wish fulfilled. He said, assume the state of the wish already being a fact. He said, make the feeling so natural, so real, so present, that it is no longer something you are practicing. It is something you are being. And being, not doing, is what changes the wiring. So let us talk about what it means to actually enter a state. Because this is the linchpin of the entire process. This is the difference between someone who understands Neville intellectually and someone who uses Neville to change their life. And the gap between those two people is not a gap of knowledge. It is a gap of embodiment. A state, as Neville described it, is not an emotion you paste on top of your current experience. It is not a feeling you manufacture through willpower. It is the total inner atmosphere of a person who is living a particular reality. Think of it this way. A person who is deeply, genuinely secure in their financial life does not walk around in a constant state of ecstasy about money. They do not think about money with breathless excitement every moment of the day. Their relationship with money is characterized by something much quieter and much more powerful. It is characterized by the absence of worry, by a settled, unremarkable ease, by the feeling that money is handled, that it flows, that it is simply part of how their life works. There is no drama to it. There is no urgency. There is just a calm, ambient sense that this area of life is taken care of. That atmosphere is the state. And when Neville said to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, he was not asking you to generate excitement about something you do not have. He was asking you to drop into the quiet, settled feeling of someone for whom this desire is already a fact, already ordinary, already here, not arriving soon, not on its way. Here, now, present tense, past tense even. Done. When you enter this state fully, when your body relaxes into it, when your breathing changes, when the muscles of your face soften, when the tightness in your chest dissolves, because there is nothing left to worry about, you have just fired a completely new neural configuration, and your brain, which does not know the difference between what is real and what is vividly felt, begins to register this state as a new experience, a new data point, a new entry in the prediction model. Do it once and the brain notices but does not reorganize. Do it twice and the brain becomes curious. Do it every day, every night, with the consistency of someone who has decided that this is no longer an experiment but a way of life, and the brain begins to build a pathway. It begins to lay new wire. It begins to insulate the new pattern with myelin, making it faster, smoother, more automatic. And here is what happens when a new neural pathway becomes strong enough. It begins to run without your conscious effort. The new state stops being something you practice and becomes something you default to. Your resting emotional state shifts. Your baseline changes. And when your baseline changes, everything above it changes too. Now we come to the second mechanism, the one that bridges the inner shift and the outer change, your energy. The word energy has been used so loosely in self-development circles that it has almost lost its precision. So let me be specific about what it means in this context. Your energy is not an abstract concept. It is the sum total of the electromagnetic and biochemical signals your body is producing at any given moment. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your body. Your brain produces electrical patterns that can be measured with equipment. Your nervous system is a continuous electrical network that regulates every organ, every muscle, every process in your body. You are, in the most literal and measurable sense, an electrical being producing a field of energy that extends beyond your skin. And here is the part that matters. The quality of that field is determined by your internal state. When your nervous system is in a state of chronic stress, when cortisol is elevated, when your sympathetic nervous system is dominant, when your muscles are tense and your breathing is shallow and your thoughts are cycling through threat detection, the field you produce is fragmented, chaotic, incoherent. It is the electromagnetic equivalent of static. And this static is not just unpleasant, it is a signal, a broadcast, a frequency that interacts with the field of energy around you in ways that are consistent, measurable, and consequential. When your internal state shifts, when you drop into a state of genuine calm, genuine trust, genuine fulfillment, the field changes. Your heart rhythm becomes coherent. Your brain waves synchronize. Your nervous system shifts into parasympathetic dominance. The field you produce becomes ordered, harmonious, and powerfully coherent. And coherent signals travel farther, interact more effectively, and produce cleaner results than chaotic ones. This is not spirituality. This is physics applied to biology. Neville described this energetic shift with different language. He spoke of states radiating outward. He spoke of consciousness being the only reality, and the world being its shadow. He said that what you are conscious of being, you must express, because consciousness is cause, and the world is effect. But the mechanism he was pointing to is the same mechanism that modern research on heart coherence, brainwave entrainment, and bioelectromagnetic fields is now confirming. Your inner state produces a measurable energy. That energy interacts with the field around you, and the field around you is not separate from the events, circumstances, and experiences that constitute your daily life. This is why two people can take the same action and get radically different results. One person sends the same email, attends the same networking event, makes the same pitch, and walks away with nothing. Another person does the same thing and walks away with everything. The difference is not in the action. The difference is in the energy behind the action. The field each person was carrying into the room. One was broadcasting coherence, calm certainty, the quiet solidity of someone who already knows this is going to work. The other was broadcasting static, desperation, the fragmented signal of someone who needs this to work because they are falling apart without it. The world responded to the signal, not the strategy. This is what Neville meant when he said that the state you occupy determines what you attract. Not metaphorically, mechanically. The state reconfigures your brain. The reconfigured brain produces a different energetic output. The different energetic output generates different interactions with the field of reality around you. And those different interactions show up as different circumstances, different people, different opportunities, different results. Control the state, control the energy, and the reality takes care of itself. But here is where most people sabotage the entire process, and it is so subtle, so invisible, so deeply habitual, that they do not even know they are doing it. They change their state during their morning meditation. They enter the feeling of the wish fulfilled. They feel genuine peace, genuine confidence, genuine ease. And then they open their eyes, pick up their phone, check their bank account, read the news, get into an argument, and within 45 minutes their nervous system is right back where it started. The old neural pathways fire. The old stress hormones flood. The old energetic field reinstates itself. And the 45 minutes of beautiful inner work is buried under 16 hours of unconscious reversion. This is not a failure of technique. It is a failure of sustained attention. And it is the reason most people practice Neville's methods for weeks or months and see only marginal shifts. They are building the new pathway for a few minutes and then reinforcing the old one for the rest of the day. They are laying new bricks in the morning and then handing the demolition crew the keys from noon until midnight. The rewiring does not happen in the meditation alone. It happens in the moments after. In the way you respond when the old reality presents itself. In the choice you make when you see something that contradicts your new state. Do you let the old circumstance pull you back into the old feeling? Or do you hold the new state steady in the face of contradictory evidence? That is where the real work lives. That is where the neural pathways are won or lost. Neville addressed this directly. He called it living in the end, not visiting the end for 10 minutes in the morning and then returning to the middle for the rest of the day. Living there, making the feeling of fulfillment your home, not your vacation. Walking through your ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday with the quiet inner atmosphere of someone for whom the desire is already done. Not pretending, not performing, not forcing a smile over a knot of anxiety, actually finding the feeling and staying in it long enough for your nervous system to accept it as the new normal. This is the discipline that Neville demanded, and it is a discipline of relaxation, not effort. You are not trying to force a feeling. You are choosing again and again to return to a state that already exists within you. Every time the old pattern fires and you gently decline to follow it, every time the old emotion surges and you let it pass without giving it your identity, every time you catch yourself thinking from the old state and you redirect your attention to the new one, you are weakening the old pathway and strengthening the new one. One synapse at a time, one moment at a time, not in the meditation, in the life. Now let us talk about the part that most people are not prepared for. Because there is a phase in this process that feels like failure, that looks like things getting worse, and that causes the majority of people to abandon the work right at the moment when it is actually beginning to take hold. When you begin to genuinely rewire your brain, when the new pathway starts to gain real strength and the old one starts to weaken, your nervous system enters a period of instability. The old programming is losing its grip but is not yet released. The new programming is gaining traction but has not yet become dominant. You are between two configurations, and neither one is fully in control. This feels chaotic. It feels disorienting. Old emotions surface with startling intensity, not because you are regressing, but because they are leaving. Stored patterns that lived in your body for years are being dislodged, and as they exit, you feel them one more time. Not as a sign that the work is failing, but as a sign that the body is finally letting go. During this phase, your external reality may also seem to contradict your new state. The bank account may not reflect your inner feeling of abundance yet. The relationship may not mirror your inner sense of being loved yet. The circumstances of your life may look unchanged, and the temptation to interpret that unchanged landscape as proof that the work is useless will be almost overwhelming. Your logical mind will say, "Look at the evidence. Nothing has changed. You are fooling yourself. This is not working." But the evidence you are looking at is old evidence. It is the printout of the old program. It is yesterday's neural pathway reflected in today's circumstance. The new program has been running for days or weeks. It has not yet had time to produce its own printout. And if you abandon it now, if you let the old evidence redefine your state, you will overwrite the new pathway with the old one, and you will restart the entire process from zero. Neville spoke about this with absolute clarity. He said that the time between planting the seed in imagination and seeing its harvest in the physical world is a bridge of incidents, and that the bridge must not be questioned. He said that once you have assumed the state of the wish fulfilled, your only task is to remain faithful to that assumption, regardless of what the senses report. He called this the Sabbath, the rest, the cessation of effort. Not because there is nothing happening, but because the work has been done internally and the external manifestation is now a matter of unfolding, not forcing. This is the hardest part, not the visualization, not the state change, not the emotional work. The hardest part is the waiting, the holding steady in the face of apparent contradiction, the willingness to trust what you have built inside yourself more than what the outside world is currently showing you. And this is where most people break. Not because they lack the ability, but because they lack the patience to let the new wiring complete itself before demanding proof that it works. So let me give you the practical architecture, the daily structure that takes everything we have discussed and translates it into a sequence you can follow starting tonight. The first and most powerful window is the moments before sleep. Neville identified this window explicitly. As you lie in bed, as your body relaxes, and your conscious mind begins to lose its grip, you enter a state that neuroscience calls the hypnagogic state, the liminal territory between waking and sleeping, where the subconscious mind is maximally receptive, and the critical faculty of the conscious mind is reduced to almost nothing. This is the state where new neural patterns can be planted most efficiently because the guard is off duty. In this state, you construct a single short scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Not a movie, not a long, complex narrative. A single scene, 15 seconds of sensory experience, a handshake after a deal is signed, the feel of a key turning in the door of a home you own, the sound of someone you love saying a specific sentence that they would only say if the thing you want were already real. You do not watch this scene. You step inside it. You feel the texture of the handshake. You feel the resistance of the key in the lock. You hear the voice as though it is spoken inches from your ear. And you feel the naturalness of it. The settled, quiet, utterly unremarkable feeling of this being your life. Loop this scene, again and again, not with force, with gentleness. Let it play as you drift. Let it become the last thing your nervous system registers before sleep. Because whatever state you carry into sleep is the state your subconscious works with all night. It is the blueprint it uses during the hours of neural consolidation, when the brain takes the experiences of the day and decides which patterns to strengthen and which to prune. Hand it the right blueprint. Give it the new state. Let it build the new pathway while you sleep. The second window is the first minutes of waking. Before you reach for your phone, before the avalanche of external information reaches your nervous system. In those first moments, while the residue of sleep still clings to your awareness and the critical mind has not yet fully engaged, return to the feeling. Not the scene necessarily. The feeling, the atmosphere, the settled, quiet knowing that the thing is done. Let your first conscious act of the day be the choice to occupy the new state rather than letting the old one boot up automatically. The third element is not a window. It is a continuous practice woven through the fabric of your ordinary life. Throughout the day, you will be triggered into old states. Something will happen that activates the old neural pathway. A bill, a comment, a memory, a fear. When this happens, and it will happen many times, you do not fight the old state. Fighting it engages with it. You notice it. You name it without drama. You say to yourself, without judgment, that is the old pathway firing. And then you gently, without force, without urgency, redirect your attention to the new state. You touch the feeling again, even for 3 seconds, even in the middle of a meeting, even in the grocery store. You return to the inner atmosphere of the person who already has what you desire, and you let that feeling wash through your nervous system for a moment before continuing with your day. Each return is a repetition. Each repetition strengthens the new pathway. Each strengthening of the new pathway weakens the old one. And over days and weeks, the balance tips. The new state stops being the one you practice and becomes the one you default to. You stop having to choose it. It chooses you. It fires automatically. The prediction engine of your brain has updated its model. It is no longer predicting based on old data. It is predicting based on a new baseline, and the reality it constructs from that new baseline is different, tangibly, undeniably, visibly different. There is something else that happens during this process that deserves to be named, because it catches people off guard and can be deeply unsettling if you do not understand what it is. As your internal state changes, the people around you will respond, not always in the way you expect. Some people, the ones who resonated with your old frequency, will begin to feel uncomfortable around you. Not because you did anything wrong, because you are no longer broadcasting the signal they were tuned into. Relationships that were built on shared complaint, shared limitation, shared identity as people who struggle will begin to feel hollow. Conversations that used to feel normal will start to feel draining. People who were comfortable with the old version of you may become resistant or confused when the new version begins to emerge. Neville addressed this with a principle he articulated more boldly than almost any other teacher in this space. He said that everyone is you pushed out, that the people in your world are not independent agents acting upon you from the outside. They are reflections of your internal state, mirrors of your assumptions, characters playing the roles your consciousness has assigned them. This is a challenging idea. It sounds like it denies other people their agency, but look at it practically rather than philosophically. When your assumptions about someone change, when you stop expecting them to behave in a particular way, when you release the story you have been holding about who they are and what they are capable of, something shifts in the dynamic. Not always immediately, but consistently. Their behavior toward you begins to change, not because you manipulated them, because the signal you were sending, the energetic template of the relationship, has been altered at its source. And the reflection has no choice but to follow. This does not mean every relationship survives the shift. Some will fall away. Some must fall away because they were built entirely on the foundation of your old state, and there is nothing to anchor them to once that foundation changes. This is not a loss. It is a reorganization. And the space that opens when those old connections release is the space that new connections, aligned with your new frequency, will fill, if you let them. Let me address the objection that has been building quietly since the beginning of this conversation, because I know it is there. It sounds something like this. If reality is just a reflection of my inner state, then are you saying that everything bad that has ever happened to me is my fault? That I created my own suffering? That I chose my trauma? No, that is not what this is saying. And it is important to be precise here, because this is where the teaching gets distorted by careless interpretation and causes real harm. You did not consciously choose the circumstances of your childhood. You did not choose the beliefs that were installed in your psyche before you had the cognitive tools to evaluate them. You did not choose the events that shaped your nervous system during the years when your brain was most impressionable and least protected. What happened to you was not your fault. But what happens next is your response. The wiring that was installed without your consent can be rewired with your consent. The states that were imposed upon you by circumstance can be replaced by states you choose deliberately. You are not responsible for the hand you were dealt. You are responsible for what you do with the cards, now that you can see them. And the entire point of this work, the entire purpose of understanding the brain, the energy, the mechanics of state, is to hand you that responsibility in a way that feels not like blame but like power, because it is power. The power to change the wiring, the power to change the broadcast, the power to change the reality that flows from both. That is not guilt. That is liberation. Now, here is what begins to happen when the new wiring takes hold. When the new pathway has been reinforced enough times that it begins to fire automatically. When the baseline state of your nervous system has genuinely shifted. When you wake up, and the first feeling in your body is not anxiety, but quiet, ordinary, unremarkable peace. The world begins to rearrange itself around you in ways that your strategic mind could never have planned. Opportunities appear that you did not create through effort. Conversations happen that contain exactly the information you needed at exactly the moment you needed it. People enter your life who seem to carry the frequency of the thing you have been cultivating internally. Doors open that you did not knock on. Paths clear that you did not know existed. And the timing of it all has a quality that feels orchestrated, not by you, but by something that has access to far more information than your conscious mind. Neville called this the bridge of incidents. The series of events that connects your internal assumption to its physical manifestation. He was emphatic that you cannot predict the bridge. You cannot plan it. You cannot control the sequence of events through which the thing arrives. Your job is to assume the end, to occupy the state, to hold the new wiring steady, and then to pay attention with open hands and an open mind as reality begins to assemble the bridge on your behalf. This is where trust replaces effort. This is where the old habit of forcing, pushing, strategizing, and white-knuckling gives way to a different posture entirely. The posture of someone who has done their inner work, who knows what they have planted, and who is content to watch the garden grow without yanking the seed out of the ground every morning to check its progress. This trust is not passive. It does not mean you sit on your couch and wait for miracles. It means you move through your day with your new state intact, and you follow the impulses that arise from that state. Action still happens, but the nature of the action changes. It becomes aligned rather than desperate, inspired rather than fearful. It feels like the next natural step, rather than a frantic lunge towards something you are terrified of losing. The energy behind your action changes because the brain and the nervous system driving the action have changed. And aligned action, action taken from a state of coherent energy rather than chaotic desperation, produces results that forced action never could. I want to leave you with something that Neville said that contains the entire teaching in a single instruction. He said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and observe the route that your attention follows." That is the whole practice. Assume the state, not the image, not the affirmation, not the intellectual concept, the state, the feeling, the full body, nervous system deep experience of already being the person for whom this is done. And then watch. Watch what your attention does when you are in that state. Watch what you notice. Watch what ideas arise. Watch what actions feel natural. Watch what falls away and what flows toward you. Your attention, when it is being guided by a coherent and aligned state, becomes the most precise navigational instrument you possess. It will lead you to the right conversation, the right decision, the right place at the right time. Not through magic, through the simple, observable mechanics of a brain that has been rewired to perceive a different set of possibilities, producing an energy that interacts with the world differently, generating a reality that was always available but was invisible to the old configuration. The brain you had yesterday was showing you yesterday's world. The brain you build tonight, in the quiet theater of your imagination, with the full weight of your feeling pressed into a scene that implies the wish is done, will begin to show you a different world, not because the world changed first, because you changed first. And the world, which was never anything other than a mirror, had no option but to reflect the new image back. You are the wiring. You are the current running through it. You are the signal it produces, and you are the reality that signal calls into form. You have been all of these things your entire life. The only thing that has changed is that now you know it. And knowing it, truly knowing it, not as a concept you agree with, but as a lived experience you can feel in your body, makes you the most dangerous thing the old reality has ever encountered. A person who has decided, at the level of their nervous system, to be someone new, and who refuses, quietly, without drama, without force, to be convinced otherwise by anything the old world still has to say. That is the rewiring. That is the energy. That is the new reality. It does not begin someday. It begins the moment you close your eyes tonight and feel with every cell the truth of what you have chosen to become.